Okay, here's another factoring example, and the previous ones are coefficients on the a value for the coefficient on x squared was a 1. But now we look at it, it's a 2, and that adds a little level of difficulty to it, a couple extra steps, but the process is still the same. There's your b value, and there's your c value. And so we're still going to find out what multiplies to a number and then adds to the middle number. So what is that number we want to multiply by? Well, I've always been doing a times c. So let me write that down here. A equals 2, b equals -3, and c equals -5. And so we see a times c equals 2 times -5, which is -10. That's a little different than the previous problems because we were multiplying a equals 1. And so that let us skip around. Now we're going to have to be a little bit more careful on how to do it. So there's some extra steps there. And we want the factors of -10 that add to whatever the b value is, -3. So we want these simultaneous things. So we just got to be systematic in how we do it. So let me do that here, and let's figure out the first thing. We're going to go, what's the first thing? Well, 1 times -10 equals -10, and 1 plus -10 equals -9. Clearly that works, but that doesn't. So let's just switch the sign around. -1 times 10 is still -10. We're happy with that. But -1 plus +10 is +9. And most people can do this part in their head and see both of them don't work. So we can't use 1 and -10. So we have to ask, is there another pair? So let me erase these out. And there's got to be another pair here. And we know there's another number, 2 times -5. We tried that one. Okay, so let's go back to that. 2 times -5 equals -10, which is what we want. 2 plus -5 equals -3. Is that what we want? 2 plus -5 equals -3. It looks like it. And just for practicing sake, if that didn't work, you could try -2 times 5 is -10, and that works. And -2 plus 5 equals +3. That doesn't work. So we know we're going to use these numbers here, 2 and -5. We're going to use them a little differently. And so you're going to have to watch carefully here. So what I have to do is we found a way. So let me get rid of the other stuff. We found a way to use two numbers, 2 and -5, that multiply to -10, yet still add to -3. Multiply to -10, yet add to -3. So that's our thing there. And what we're going to do is we're going to write the middle term here a funky way. We're going to write it in terms of 2 and -5 because we want them to be -3. We want -3 and we have -3, so we're going to write 2 x's minus 5 x's is -3 x's. Okay? So that's a little bit different than we did before. I'm going to erase some stuff here. Whoops. Okay, change my pen. And then I'm just going to bring the beginning stuff down. 2x squared. Remember, this is a +2 in red, so it's +2x. And then we're going to bring the -5 down. So all I've done is all this work was just so I could write -3x in a funky way as 2x plus 5x. Now, all we have to do is now we do something called grouping. So I'm going to just change the color here. Let's change it to blue. And I'm going to group the front two terms. I'm going to group the back two terms, and you'll notice that I kept the sign with the number. So negative 5x, positive 2x, minus 5, and then this is implied and this one is implied positive here. And what I'm going to do is treat this set of parentheses as its own factoring, and this set of parentheses as its own factoring. So I'm going to ask myself, what goes into 2 and into 2 evenly? Well, clearly the number 2 does. And then both terms have at least one x. This term has x times x, and this term has just x. So I can take a set of x's out as well, and I can see what's left. Well, 2 divided by 2, because there's a 2 here, is 1. X squared divided by x is x. And then 2, positive 2 divided by 2 is 1. And x divided by the x here is 1. So I'm going to erase a bunch of this stuff here. Okay? So you should be able to check. This times 2x times x is 2x squared, which is what we had. 2x times positive 1 is 2x. So we just factored out the common factor for those front two terms is 2x. And we'll likewise do the same thing, but there's one thing to notice. Sorry, excuse me, pressed the wrong one. This has a negative sign here. Whatever the sign is, positive or negative, bring it down there. And so I'm going to write that. Negative. We're going to have to factor out a negative of some kind. I'm not going to worry about the negative right now, other than I already wrote it down. And what goes into 5 and 5? Well, clearly 5 does. This has an x term, this does not, so we can't factor out the x. So now we ask ourselves, this is negative 5, and this is negative 5. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. There was no x's taken out. And then negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. And if we want to check it, negative 5 times 1x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times positive 1 is negative 5. We factored out the greatest common factor there. And if you've done everything right, you'll notice this parenthesis will match up with this parenthesis here. So this method is sometimes called factoring by parts, because I broke it into parts, or factoring by grouping, because I had two sets of groups above. So there's some different names. There's an obscure one called the British method, which doesn't really describe it, but those are some of those. That's what's going on there. So those two are the same. So we can actually factor that out and have 1x plus 1. And then we're going to have some leftovers here, the 2x and the minus 5. So I'm just going to write 2x minus 5. Okay? So I did all that work. I actually have the right answer, but let's check it. What we want to do is do our FOIL. So let me erase some stuff here. I'm going to erase this over here so I have some room. Okay? And so let's do our FOIL. What's the first terms? 1x times 2x. That's the f of FOIL. Okay? The f is 1x times 2x, which is 2x squared. Okay? The O, the outside, 1x times negative 5 is negative 5x. And then the inside is 1 times 2x, which is 2x. And then the last is 1 times negative 5. And again, we'll see that we have a minus 5x and a positive 2x. That gives us 3 x's. So we get 3 x's. We have 2x squared with nobody to dance with, so it's going to be on its own. That was a positive 3x we had earlier. And then we have negative 5 on the end. And you'll see that matches up with our original problem here. So we know these are the right factors. And so I can go, I'm done. There's the factors of it. So there is this, so based on what we've done in the past, there's this extra set of steps in here where we write the negative 3 in a funky form. It's still negative 3, but it's written in a funky form. Then we do some grouping with the first 2 and the last 2. And then we look for common factor from the first group, common factor from the second group. And if we've done it right, both remaining sets of parentheses will be the same. And those parentheses can be factored out. And then you have the leftovers becoming their own set of parentheses. There we go. We'll do one more.